Guys, I've got a confession to make. I've had the supercharger on the C5 now for a couple of years, and every time I get more than about 20 miles from home, I get worried that I'm going to bounce off the REV limiter and crack my mass airflow sensor in half. But the good news is, I finally have a solution for that, and we're going to install it and talk about it next.
Toys for life.
Guys, I got a girdle for the C5 Corvette. No, not that kind of a girdle. This kind of a girdle. And what this is for, if you've got a supercharged C5 Corvette and you've retained your mass airflow sensor, then every once in a while when, not if, but when you hit that REV limiter, the throttle plate closes pretty quick. And sometimes the blow-off valve can't quite keep up. You get a little bit of a pressure surge within your intake track. And once in a while, especially if you're 100 miles away, the mass airflow sensor likes to split in half. And what this does is it slides over your existing mass airflow sensor end. It bolts the two halves together. It makes it virtually impossible for the mass airflow sensor to blow up. We're going to install this and review it together. But before I do that, a quick shout out to the guys at A&A Corvette for providing their C5 mass airflow sensor girdle. Let's get started. First step is to remove the wire going to the mass airflow sensor. I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the clamps going in and out. These have been on for a while, so it's going to take a little bit of work to loosen these up, but you want to be careful so you don't damage anything. Now the first thing I'm going to do, since this is off, you would be foolish not to clean your mass airflow sensor. If you can see those three little wires that go across the main bars, there's two on one side of the vane on the right, one on the left. Those are the elements that need to be cleaned. And what I'm going to use is mass airflow sensor cleaner. And all you need to do is just give them a good squirting from both sides. And that cleans off any oil or anything that's kind of coated the wire. You don't want to try to touch them. Some people do with a Q-tip, but they're so fragile. That's all I do is just give them a little squirt. Okay, we've got the mass airflow sensor on the bench. And what's going to happen is the girdle slides over this part of the mass airflow sensor. And using one of the supplied screws, you need to screw it into here. But this is not tapped. So don't just try to run it in there because you will crack this metal. Hopefully you've got a tap and die set. If not, just go to your local hardware store. It's a 1/4 inch by 20 is what I show it as. And we're going to tap this so it'll receive the screw. Make sure you start it nice and straight. And since it's aluminum, it cuts really easy. Every turn or so, go back about a 1/4 turn to cut off the aluminum chunks that you're cutting. You can feel them cut. Now you've got yourself threads that didn't exist before. Do that to all three of these before you go any further. The next step is, since this just slides over here, and it is machined perfectly in my opinion, it's nice and snug, but it's plastic and aluminum. It's not going to hold up to 15 pounds of boost. And A&A doesn't claim that it will. They suggest you run a bead of RTV sealant across here. And so I've lightly sanded this so the RTV has something to bite into. I've also lightly sanded this inside edge. I'm going to put a bead in here. Tell me in the comments if you think I'm being overly anal by sanding that, but I always think it needs something to be able to bite into. I looked it up on the spec sheet for RTV Black, and it says when it's fully cured it holds back 250 pounds. I'm not sure I really believe that, but if it'll hold back even 100 pounds, it certainly will hold back my 14 or 15 pounds of boost. Make sure you've got this lined up correctly because the spacing on these tabs is different, so I want to make sure I put it on once and it's good to go. There we go. I'm going to start the 3 bolts. Again, these bolts are supplied with the kit. Get them all started good before you tighten any one of them down. And then snug them all up. Don't go too tight because you will break the tabs. Okay, I got them all 3 cinched down. Using an old cloth, clean up the excess of the RTV. And you should now have yourself one relatively bulletproof mass airflow sensor. Make sure your clamps are all where they need to be and install it in the reverse order that you took it off. And you're done. Now you can drive wherever you want and you don't have to worry about this breaking in half. Now before we go, I've been doing this YouTube thing long enough to know that there's some people out there wondering, dude, why don't you just ditch the MAF sensor and go with the speed density tune? And that's a fair question. The answer is, I'm just a beginning to intermediate level tuner, and I've had this for a couple years. I found it well within my ability to tune, has great drivability, and has about 615 crank horsepower, maybe 530 at the rear tires. So it does everything that I want it to do with great drivability. My wideband shows that my air-fuel ratios are always right where I want them to be. So there's no reason for me to go with the speed density setup. Now, if I was going to try to boost this thing and get 700 or 800 horsepower out of it, that would be a different story, because even the 2003 better mass airflow sensor at that point in time would probably become a restriction. And I ditch it at that point in time because it's going to hold you back. So at 600 horsepower, in my opinion, the MAF system works just great. Now guys, as mentioned, I tuned this thing and I installed it myself. If you missed that series, I'll include in your upper right hand corner the entire build series. It shows you exactly every step of it, essentially. So guys, if you found value in this video, please hit that like and subscribe button below. And as always, thanks for watching.